Hey guys, and welcome to this week's installment of Tuesdays with Lauri. My name is Lauri Laukkanen, and I'm one of the editors at SLR Lounge. You can also find me on Facebook at Lauri Laukkanen Photography. The topic for this week's episode comes from multiple reader requests that I received last week after posting the How I Shot It Behind the Scenes video about my latest photograph titled Memento. You guys expressed your interest in learning more about the post-processing and color work that I did for the image. And keeping that in mind, I decided that we'd take an in-depth look at the curves adjustment panel in Photoshop and how we can use those curves for color grading. So let's get started. Here you can see the image, and as you can see, it's pretty bright, pure, and kind of white. But my goal for this image was to make it look more like a fashion photograph. So that's what I kept in mind when working on the colors. But before we get into the real color grading process, let's talk about the curves adjustment panel for a while. You can open up the curves adjustment panel from here, clicking on this circle which kind of is white and black, and click on the word curves. This opens up the curves adjustment panel, which has 4 different tabs: the RGB tab, red, green, and blue tabs. The RGB tab controls the brightness of the image. So if I pull this up, it brightens up the image. If I pull this down, it makes the image darker. And then these points here represent the darkest and the brightest spot in the image. So by pulling down this point here, I can bring down the brightest spot of the image. So I bring down the highlights, make them darker. And by bringing up this point here, I can brighten up the shadows, just like this. And for example, if I want to add contrast into this image, I can create a custom point here in the middle by just clicking on the line and then pull up the bright side and pull down the shadows, and that way you create an S-curve and increase the contrast of the image. You can always get back and reset the curves by clicking on this button here. Then let's look at the colors. Each of these lines control just one color. So this curve here controls the red. So when I pull up this curve, it makes the image more red. And the opposite of red is cyan. So when I pull the red curve down, it makes the image cyan. Okay? The same goes with the green curve. I pull it up, it makes it green. Pull it down, it makes it magenta, which is the opposite of green. And then we have the blue channel here. And pull it up, it makes the image more blue. Pull it down, it makes it more yellow. And in all of these, we can also just add the green color into the shadows if we want. Put more magenta into the midtones and to the highlights. And that way we can control these curves. But with that said, let's now look, what did I do for my image here? What kind of adjustments did I do? I first started out by adding a tiny bit of contrast to the image. So what I did, I just brought this part here slightly down, not a lot, just a little bit, and then brightened up this part of the image. So I have a tiny bit of a S-curve going on here. Then, after that, I usually start by taking a look at the blue channel. When going for a fashion look, the safe bet is to put some blue color into the shadows and put yellow into the highlights, like this. This is this type of a split tone, blue and yellow, is what magazines use often in their fashion style photographs. So this is a safe bet. And this is how I usually start working on colors. I work on the blues first, and after that go into the greens and reds. After I've done this, I go to the green tab and add some green into the shadows and the midtones. So I added a bit of green to the shadows, which makes it more light blue, and very slightly add some green to the midtones as well here. I don't touch the highlights in this one. And then lastly, I go to the red panel and take away some red from the shadows, but don't go crazy with it, just some small changes like this, and added some red to the midtones, very little, like this. And already here you can see now the image looks pretty much like the finished product. One last thing which I did was I noticed that the skin was getting maybe slightly too yellowish, too saturated in my opinion. So what I did, I closed this curves adjustment layer here and go down to the hue saturation panel. And here's this hand. If you click on this hand, you can pick a point in this image, and I just click on this skin here, and it automatically knows that we are now going to be controlling the yellows in this image. And I just pull down the saturation a bit, and you can try changing the hue. As you can see, it goes to reds and greens, but just wanted to make it slightly cooler, so slightly to the blue side, +3, and the saturation down a bit more, like this. We close this down. I maybe want to see slightly more yellow in it, so I just pull down the opacity of this adjustment. Yeah, and now as you can see, the skin is looks slightly more natural. And now we can just group these together, and I'll show you the before and after. So here's the image without the color grading, and this is after applying the curves and the hue and saturation panel. So that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's installment of Tuesdays with Lauri. And as always, if you have questions or requests for future episodes, just leave a comment down below or shoot me an email at lauri@slrlounge.com. I'll try to answer all your questions and take your requests into consideration. See you next week. Bye.